In terms of energy efficiency, how far down the line do you think we are with this? It's often called the low-hanging fruit, but have we got the fruit yet, or is it still slightly out of reach?
Yes, we do have the low-hanging fruit. The fruit has been picked, but it hasn't yet been sold to the consumer. In other words, in many areas, we already have the international standards that show how to measure the efficiency of such and such a device or in such and such a context. In those cases, when we have, for example, regulations in different countries for energy efficiency, the ideal solution is to take the IEC standards that already exist and as technical items to use nothing else, because the technical facts are the same no matter which borders you are behind or in front of, and leave the differences to only the policy issues. And today this isn't always happening. So in a sense, the low-hanging fruit is partly there. There is more fruit that isn't hanging quite so low, and we have to have slightly higher ladders. And those ladders involve our work as international technical standard setters, but they also involve stakeholders from a broader range than we have currently. For example, many policy initiatives need specific technical ways of implementing them. The technical answers won't change across countries, but we need the policy goals to be at least sketched in, if not set in stone, in order to know what technical items are needed. And for that, we are trying to improve the representation of governments and regulators as stakeholders in our standards, because they need to say what it is they need. The answer will not be a policy, it will be a technical standard, but will it be the right one for their purposes?
And which parts of the world are leading in those technical standards? It's often said that Europe has led the way in terms of emission standards, energy efficient light bulbs, better insulation of homes. Which areas of the world do you see are leading in terms of energy efficiency?
Well, not only would I be killed if I singled out one particular part of the world, that's probably just the human part of the answer to your question, but the objective part of the answer is that different countries and different continents are leading in different areas. As an example, the first major country to ban filament lamps was Australia. It wasn't necessarily the place where the compact fluorescents were first developed, but it was the first that recognized that particular item as an energy efficiency measure. It's very different. There are, for example, electric trains which are much more developed in Europe than in most other places, for obvious reasons, historical ones. Japan is extremely interested in having single international standards for electric railways, and therefore there's a lot of activity in the IEC. If the Americans don't contribute today, then probably that's a mistake, because perhaps in 15 years there'll be a lot of electric trains in the US as well, which is not the case today. So depending on which particular area, either market area or technical area you look at, there'll be different leaders.
And when you're talking about sort of efficiency standards, that can clearly help make countries more competitive in the long run. Do you think that countries that don't necessarily, clearly not asking you to single anyone out here, but do you think that countries that don't necessarily take that advantage now will lose out in the long run in terms of competitiveness?
I think it's a complex question. The short answer is yes, but mainly because each country will be advancing technologically more or less at the speed that its own industry advances technologically. Now, industry isn't only manufacturing industry. If you import very large amounts of very high technology and use them effectively, which is more or less what Europe has been doing for several decades with electronics, you can still be very high in the technology ladder, on the technology ladder. But I believe that the amount of uptake of energy efficiency and renewable technology in the developing world is a crucial issue, and one of the fundamental building blocks they need, it's by no means the only one, is the international standards that show what an energy efficient product looks like. That won't give them the ability to manufacture it. It won't necessarily even give them all the information they need in order to know what to buy if they have the money to import. But it will give them an element of that.